terms permeated with stale skunk. Grifter, hate speech, Hitler, lying politician, female wage gap. So these are your terms permeated with stale skunk. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to start here with grifter. I'm a grifter. You're a grifter. What is grifting all about? What is this grifter thing we hear so much about? Scott Adams was talking about this too. It's actually been an ongoing joke. It's one of his favorite words. Because, people will say, it goes back to the making those appealingly persuasive appeals. And you point to somebody and say, well, I'm not going to argue their logic or their evidence or their argument. I'm just going to point to who they are and say, that's a grifter. I'm putting a label on them. I'm making an association. And that's really the argument right there. That's an ethos-based argument. They're a grifter. Well, are they grifting? What is grifting? So grifting, the way that I view a grifter myself is by looking at somebody that might be seeming very opportunistic, kind of like a used car salesman or saleswoman, where they're clearly in this for like a financial, a fiscal incentive, a money-based incentive, and they don't really believe in what they're saying, but they're trying to get people's money, to get people's attention, trying to become famous by sort of parroting whatever they think is going to sell them the most, get them the most attention, sell the most product, get them the most donations. A grifter is somebody, again, that tries to find a financial incentive, and it's used as a pejorative term. So I'm not sure if there's an exact pinpoint definition for it. But that's kind of the gist of it. Somebody that's just manipulative. They might be persuasive, but they're also manipulative, and they're trying to make a buck off of this newest craze. That's kind of what grifter is all about. And so people will point at you and say, well, with me, I don't monetize my channel, and I say words like Nazi every video. So it's hard for me to be a grifter. In fact, I do have a video that tells you Jeff Tidwell is a grifting, gaslighting fraud, but that is satire. That is satire. I talk about that. But grifter, it's just used to shut down conversation. It's just like Nazi, or it's just like misogynist or racist or sexist, or any of these terms that these terms that get thrown around, and then you have to look at the person and go, well, are they this thing? With grifter, it's one of the most insidious of the labels you could throw at somebody, because you're going to somebody and saying, well, you're a grifter. But are they trying to make money? Like, you have to go through all the different, go down the checklist of all the things that would make them grifting. Are they just really good at what they do? And then again, are you going to begrudge somebody that's very persuasive and happens to make money while also informing people and having a product, having something that has merit to it, that has you're actually paying for something that you enjoy, and they could where's the line? Where's the line between, again, I feel like I'm not necessarily neutral on this because I do not monetize, I do not put ads up on Twitter. I just make tweets and videos like this one here. But where's the line between a grifter and somebody that's just good at what they do and has a career and wants to make money? It just shuts down dialogue. Definitely covered in stale skunk, I would say. Even though there are grifters out there, it's I think that there are grifters out there. There are people that are opportunists and they're manipulative and they just want your money. That's true. Keep your eye out for those people. But I think that it can certainly be overused. Kind of like gaslighting. In fact, that's the other two tweets that were connected with this one were terms scented with kale vapor. Check that video out on BitChute and YouTube, as well as the terms found in clouds of peach green tea. Yeah, check it out. The next term is hate speech. Now, this one I wasn't sure if I should include at all because it doesn't really exist. It's arbitrary. You determine what hate speech is. I determine what hate speech is. And in fact, you and I both determine what free speech is as well. And now hate speech is something that people use when they're saying, well, someone said something offensive. Now, some things are more offensive than others. When you have this, for lack of a better term, wanton racism, wanton otherism and sexism, when you have people that are very clearly trying to hurt somebody, there might be some hate in there. All right, there might be some hate in there. But then again, people also use all kinds of different terms, different words. I'm not trying to defend those that use slurs. If you use a slur, let society decide. Let other human beings decide. I'm not the one that's going to tell you if it's right or wrong. That's not what this channel is all about. We are both sidesists here. It might be right. It might be wrong. The people will judge it. The people will decide. And that's what hate speech is all about. It's about people deciding if something is hate speech or not. It's an arbitrary decision. It's a choice of somebody. An authority figure might say something is a hate speech term or a hate speech sentence. But in my mind, it's so malleable. It's so adaptable. This term can be put on any statement, almost anything that's critical at all. They'll call it hate speech. It can't be hateful conduct. You know, Twitter recently wanted to put a warning or put a suspension on what's his name? He was just at the White House. Terrence, I forget his last name, but Terrence is a comedian that's on Twitter. Check him out. He just went to the White House, and they were trying to get him for hateful conduct because he was being critical of Democrats that were trying to impeach the president. And much like this channel, he has, Terrence, he has a, let's call it Trump positive message. So, this is what they do. They'll say it's hateful conduct they'll say it's anti-Semitism to go after Adam shit, little Adam shit. They'll say it's anti-Semitism because he's Jewish. And that, like I was saying earlier about that, like if you point to somebody and criticize them, and then people say it's racist or it's anti-Semitic or it's sexist based on these immutables, right? Now, Judaism isn't necessarily, it's a religion. It's not really immutable, but then there are the Jews, which is an ethnic background, so it is it actually is an immutable characteristic. But that's just, again, that's the persuasion of it. That's the framing. They say, well, you're making fun of somebody that happens to be this. They happen to be a man, so you're being sexist against men. They happen to be white, so you're racist against whites. They're black, so you're racist against blacks. They're Jewish, so you're anti-Semitic. They're Catholic, so you're anti-Catholic. That's not reality. That's framing. That's manipulation of the dialogue to make sure that the argument gets shut down. One way or another, the claims of anti-Semitism will shut that dialogue down. So hate speech is something that gets used more as a weapon and it's not anything that can be strictly defined. In fact, the First Amendment of the United States Constitution does not define hate speech. And really, a lot of terms of service don't actually define it either. So it's another term that's covered in stale skunk. Pepe Le Pew, you could say. Just another malleable term. Hitler! Now here's a term that's not malleable. Well, actually it is, because everybody's Hitler. There is this again, you can leave a comment below with what I'm talking about now. There is this idea of like the Hitler policy or the Hitler inevitability, or whatever it's called, where they say like every argument on the internet, it's like so many degrees from a Hitler reference. Hitler is always just beyond a couple of more sentences whenever you're trying to get to the bottom of why something happened. Or somebody will say that you're like Hitler. Oh, you're being a Nazi. You're being a fascist. Fascist has become really popular. That, I believe, might be one of the terms scented with kale vapor. But they'll say you're Hitler, or the president's Hitler, or whoever it might be is suddenly this totalitarian, fascistic, anti-human figure because they disagree with you. So they say Hitler. Whenever I have actually seen people that end the conversation right there when Hitler is mentioned, because it's such an easy reference. It's almost like, oh, you're just like Mussolini. You're just like Hitler. You're not really killing tens of millions of people or causing all these problems. You're not invading Poland. But, hey, you might have the slightly wrong opinion on this one thing that I disagree with. So you're Hitler. Hitler has been thrown around so much. It is almost a malleable term that we can just, you just throw it at somebody. It's a grifter. Throw Hitler at them. And no, I don't want to call it anti-intellectual, but it does kind of indicate that you're not firing on all cylinders. You're a little bit out of ideas if you're making Hitler references. Every time someone does something wrong, you're making a Hitler reference, and especially if you're referring to the President of the United States as Hitler. Orange Man Hitler just doesn't fly off, doesn't roll off the tongue the way that I believe it should. So that's another one of those terms that if you get that, if you hear Hitler and you're not hearing it in the context of World War II or being the Chancellor of Germany prior to the war, dying in the bunker, being gay, whatever it might be about Hitler, his family life, his belief system, his ideology, the National Socialists, any of the real Nazis, the real 1940s, 1930s Nazis. If it's outside of that context and you're seeing Hitler, and it's a serious discussion, not a joke, not satire, it's like someone trying to really make a point, the odds are they are permeated with stale skunk. So that's one to avoid. Next one, lying politician. Lying politician. As if there's a distinction between politician and lying politician. Not really. Some politicians are more truthful or honest, intellectually honest than others. God bless Bernie Sanders. I hope you are feeling better after your mild heart attack, Bernie. But, he's he made it his brand, Bernie Sanders. His campaign's over. It's over. It's unofficially over. I would be very careful with making donations. And again, I think it is a very emotional time right now, so I don't want to be too... I'm not going to go after Bernie Sanders in this video, maybe a future video. But I don't see the need anymore, because when somebody has a heart attack on the campaign trail, that's all, folks. That's all, folks. He had a bit more honesty, at least, his ideology, his policy positions are far-fetched. They're difficult to achieve, but at least Bernie seemed, on the outside, most of the persuasion experts I talked to, the body language experts I talked to say that Bernie is telling the truth. To his knowledge, Bernie's telling the truth. And yet, even Bernie, even those that are a little more intellectually honest and less lying, fall into this world called politics. And as one of my videos says, check it out on my channel, politics is a post-truth realm. So, lying politician, and literally when I was a Bernie supporter, and I was, in 2015 and 2016, I was a Bernie supporter. And everyone was talking about how he was different. He actually said the difference between me and Hillary Clinton is we're telling the truth. We're telling the truth. And I was in this mindset where I'm like, not all politicians lie. But it depends on how you're framing the term lie. Like if someone tells a little bit of an exaggeration, is that a lie? Is hyperbole a lie? Is directional accuracy a lie? I've talked about that in the past as well, but I'll talk about it again. I mean, I don't. It's all about how you'd like to define this term lie. If I say, for example, you know what? Hey, YouTube and BitChute audience, I'm going to go ahead and get us all 7 ice creams. Okay? 7 ice cream cones. All right? And it's going to be great. And then I come back with 6. Well, in a sense, I was lying, but I was also directionally accurate. Okay? Like, I did get ice cream cones, and I got a lot of them. I said there'd be 7, but instead there were 6. Technically, it's a lie. Sure, you could cast it, you could frame it as a lie. But in politics, you know, it's all about directional accuracy. President Obama said that change is glacial. As long as you're moving, and I think this is the way most Americans see it as well, as long as you're moving in the right direction, you're doing a good job. If things are trending in the wrong direction, whatever that direction might be, well, people see that. They see the economy slowly sliding down the hill. And sometimes you need a little hyperbole. You need a little positivity. You need a little speculation to get economic markets moving. Okay, you need optimism. And sometimes optimism means telling somebody in a wheelchair that they're going to win the Olympics someday. And they very well might. They might win the Special Olympics. They might achieve many accolades and beat all the odds. But in the reality, you're trying to encourage that person. You're trying to give them positivity, to give them energy, to help them achieve whatever they can, whatever their goal might be, whatever they want. But you are kind of, in a sense, lying to them. You're lying to them, but it's understood like, oh, I understand that you're telling me something that's probably not true. It seems like an exaggeration. It's hyperbole. But is it really a lie? Do people hold them to that? Or is it seen more as like a little white lie? Or is it seen as just a means to an end, trying to push the person into a better place to help them get from point A to point B? Is it a lie? So, but lying politician, I mean, if you're going by any standard, they're always lying. Okay? President Trump has made an art form out of the hyperbole, out of the exaggeration, out of the big ask. Another part of persuasion is the big ask. Bernie Sanders made 1 billion of them in 2016 when he was asking for Medicare for all and all these different things that, you know, I would say, yeah, it's good for us to really try to hit it out of the park and you know, have all these good ideas. But then most people were telling me, well, you got to be more pragmatic. You can't like tell the people that they're going to get, you know, raised taxes on the millionaires and billionaires and socialized medicine and free college and no more wars ever and no more drone bombs. Okay, Obama dropped 26,000 drones in 2016 alone, and I think President Trump dropped in the area of 30,000 in 2017. If Bernie Sanders were elected president, which he unfortunately won't be due to age and having a heart attack, and also, you know, falling in the shower, you know, I don't want to, you know, hit the Bernie supporters while they're down, but I mean, let's be honest, guys. Okay, let's be honest. I was a Bernie supporter, and reality hit me in the face when he lost to the worst politician in history, the worst presidential candidate in history, Hillary Clinton. So I just want to keep, like, we're on this channel and on my Twitter and everywhere else, I try to keep it as real as possible. There's some metaphysical stuff. There's getting into crazy philosophical concepts and weird framing of different things. But at the end of the day, I'm just trying to keep it real. Real Jeff Tidwell on Twitter. And Bernie Sanders, he's done, folks. He's cooked. Gave it a good run. But politicians lie all the time, and there's no such thing as a politician that isn't fibbing a little bit, because otherwise nothing would ever get done. You need to have a little bit of hyperbole and optimism, because once it was introduced, once you have one side playing rules for radicals, it turns out that if the other side doesn't play, to some degree, this rule for radical game, they're at a disadvantage. And that's just one, system of how to handle political strategy. So lying politicians, I mean, if they're a little bit wrong, as long, I say, if we're really talking about, getting the stale skunk off of these politicians, I'd say at least if they're directionally accurate, if they're generally correct, I don't worry about the lies, because there's so much that happens, so much that changes. And the fact of the matter is, one other thing about politicians and lying is that sometimes a reporter will ask a point-blank question about like foreign policy, or about like where are we attacking next, or like what's this strategic move? Like, can't you tell us what this next move is? And I say, like, we're not going to give up our secrets to the entire world just because you think, and largely it's often for partisan reasons, that something is going on that you're unhappy with. Like, we have to hold our politicians accountable, but they can't tell you everything that's going on in the boardroom, everything that's going on, in terms of getting strategic about war. And, persuasion works even better or even best when there are unknowns, there are implieds, there are actual concrete items as well on the chessboard, on the table. But if you reveal too much information, if you don't allow, and this goes for persuasion, if you don't allow people to imagine what could be, if you can't be like scientifically exact, you have to create an image in people's heads and make them think about it, and make them question their values and think, well, what do I really want? Do I want this? Do I want that? Like, that's what it's about. And like, you can't give people all the information. So yeah, that's lying politician. When you hear someone doesn't understand that politicians lie, that's a sign they don't understand persuasion and maybe should study it, among other disciplines. Finally, we have female wage gap. Female wage gap. You'll often hear them say that women make 80 cents on the dollar compared to men. But Jordan Peterson actually, and look it up, do your research, I say. Seek subject matter experts. He actually has 16 different factors, 16 different vectors, 16 different situations that impact, factors that impact the wage gap. Now, women are at a great biological disadvantage when it comes to jobs. They bear children. Okay, even if you have a man, a stay-at-home dad, I'm just going to go through a couple of the different reasons why the female wage gap is a myth. Even if you have a stay-at-home dad, the woman has to stay out. Women can't work as long as men can. Men have a little bit more stamina. They also can't, and by that I don't mean that there are no women out there that can do the work for like 60 or 80 or 100 hours. There are certainly women that work over 100 hours, and I'm not sure how you pull it off, and I give you a lot of kudos for that. But I'm saying in general, it's a little bit more difficult for a woman to give up. Women don't really tend to have that men don't tend to have the biological clock as well. And men don't have to deal with the awfulness of the period. And there's all these different ways that men have a little bit more stamina. They have about 40% more upper body strength. And certain jobs, you don't see a lot of women working these engineering jobs, not the STEM. We want to get more women into STEM, but in terms of these like heavy lifting jobs, like working on an oil rig, working as a construction worker, these are like high-end jobs that are essentially completely off limits to women. It puts them at a disadvantage. But there's a number of different reasons why women tend to go into fields that, and this is all generalization, so certainly leave me a comment below if you have any thoughts or observations on this particular point. But women tend to go into fields where they're dealing with people. And men seem to be more interested in things, in sciences. Again, speaking generally, not speaking in terms of specifics, specific people. Because Lord knows there are millions upon millions of men and women that do not fall into these, do not fall into the stereotypes or whatever it might be. They might be going against the trend. But the trend is that women prefer jobs where they're more social. They're dealing with people. There's a psychological element that they're working with people, and they're usually not solitary jobs. Whereas men have a tendency to seek more thing-based. Okay, they're more obsessive. How many women do you know out there that are obsessive record collectors? There aren't many. There aren't as many. Again, the exceptions don't prove the rule. So you can certainly do your research on why the female wage gap is a myth. It's certainly not about sexism, at least, in general. There are cases, of course, where people are being paid different amounts for, sexist or otherist reasons, but in general, it's not the case. In fact, Milton Friedman, I actually watched a video recently of Milton Friedman talking about how demanding that women always get equal pay for equal work is actually not good for the women. Because once women are truly equal, if there's any other consideration, the fact that they might need to have time off for example, maternity, if they need to have time off for any reason, they're at a disadvantage. Men don't need to take time off for the same reasons that women do. I consider this to be a little bit ineloquent on my part, but like I say, seek out more information. I don't believe in the wage gap. I think that women happen to choose careers that make a little less money, and they also have situation biologically that doesn't correlate directly with the male experience. Men have a little bit more leeway, and they can do things that women simply can't do physically, and some of these jobs happen to be rather more lucrative. So certainly look into it, but I think it's more of a political talking point to say that there's a wage gap, to say like we need to do something. So take action, take this side here. Go with us, and we will heal the wage gap. But in good news, there are more women working now in the United States than ever before, and the wages are slowly increasing, largely for women and minorities. So that's also a good thing. So terms permeated with stale skunk.